All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm your host, Damon Pistulka. And man, do we have a special show for you today. I've got none other than Steve Rice from Dotcomjungle up to, I don't know, he's up in the upper corner, the one that I'm not in. And then John Lamy down at the bottom from Lamy Consulting. And today we're going to be talking about driving business success with an advisory board. So we're going to be talking about a few things, and we were scheduled to have Scott Shumway here, but he had a family thing that he needed to take care of. So we're going to go to alone with the three of us, but we've got some people in the we got some people asking, right? Steve is wondering, or Richard's wondering if this is the right place. Yes. We start at 5 minutes after the hour, and that throws people off once in a while. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the meeting schedules that everybody runs today, it's you can't start on the top of the hour usually. So, well, it's awesome to get you guys on here, and we've worked on advisory boards before together, and it really is going to be fun for us to talk today a little bit about the benefits to advisory boards, because I think there's, as Steve, you can talk about too, is the difference between the different kinds of boards, and then we're going to talk a little bit about through the constituents or the people that you really want to get on a board, and why the small to mid-sized businesses might really want to consider setting up an advisory board or of some site. So Steve, tell us a little bit. First of all, let's do some introductions. Steve, tell us a little bit about you, Dotcomjungle, and you got your hair good. Your hair looks great. You got your hair great. Yeah, I got to comb mine. That's about all I have to do. So.
Thanks for having me on, Damon. It's good to see you, John. Sorry, Scott couldn't make it. My name's Steve Rice. I actually have three companies. I've got the Dotcomjungle, which we're a technology company. We help manufacturers make and implement wise technology choices. And that often includes integrations with ERPs, integrations with HubSpot, maybe development of websites, or optimizing user experiences for many stakeholders. It could be from the salespeople answering the phone all the way through to the dealer support team and dealers themselves. Then also there's SR Consulting, which is where I do the advisory board stuff. And then John and I have an organization called the Globally Conscious Leader that we're getting off the ground, and we're trying to connect experienced manufacturing and supply chain folks with young up and coming aspiring leaders, as mentors. So that's actually been very rewarding. It's more of a passion piece, trying to bring some leadership and understanding of circular economy thinking to small manufacturers from the larger manufacturers. Should we let John introduce himself, and then we'll go into some?
Yeah, go ahead. So John, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, John Lamy. I was trained as an engineer, and I worked in Silicon Valley for 25 years as an engineering manager. I went back and got an MBA somewhere along the way, and changed hats to be a consultant. And I've been doing that now for about 15 years. I love it. Let's see, I have a wife and a kid and a grandkid. And we just came off of an experience with advisory board, the three of us plus Scott Shumway. And so I'm eager to talk about what I think the benefit to the company was and could be. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about that. That's enough for me for right now. Just to kind of
I always like John. John is so mild mannered, because he's got. Correct me if I'm wrong. You got an electrical engineering degree and an MBA from MIT or something like that, and
Cornell,
and then
Cornell for the MBA.
Yeah.
MIT for the undergrad.
Yeah, MIT for the undergrad, Cornell. And then you're the only person that I've ever talked to in my life that met Hewlett and Packard. I mean, I still think that is cool as heck, man.
Somebody else yesterday, I brought that up, and they were like amazed. And I told a story. I may wind up telling the story again here on of the interchange with Bill Hewlett one time. Those were remarkable guys, absolutely remarkable guys.
Yeah. Well, and then Steve up in the upper corner there. I mean, you with your father and then yourself, virtually grew up in the outdoor industry, first with your father and him doing really starting, correct me if I'm wrong, fishing videos and TV production in the US. And then you continuing on your outdoors. I mean, you were a fishing guide in Alaska. You're a climbing guide. You're still an active climber. You've been in the outdoor clothing industry for a number of years until you started Dotcomjungle and your SR Consulting and the other things you're doing now. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah. So, well, I was fortunate. My dad didn't invent bass fishing, and he didn't invent TV shows, but he was a sports fishing writer for the largest publication on the West Coast for fishing and bass fishing, and he was one of the people who helped invent bass fishing as a sport as we know it. So I grew up driving across the United States, going bass fishing, and sitting in the back of the boat with some of the best bass fishermen in the world, literally. Ones that ended up, actually having their own fishing shows in the 70s and 80s, things like that. It was pretty fun. And like you said, I ended up being a fishing guide in Alaska, rock climbing, mountaineering instructor. I have been in the outdoor industry my whole life, even including with Dotcomjungle. We've been working with specialty outdoor retailers on the manufacturing optimization side, and as well as retailers. I actually owned the same outdoor store that I worked for, and then I owned in the teens for a while. And so super passionate about the outdoors, super passionate about that sector. Super proud about where that industry is going in terms of being leaders in circular economy thinking and other ESG kind of things. And so so my background comes from there, but then I end up in this technology area, which just kind of suits me. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I could get distracted on that for quite a while because I think it's interesting as heck, some of your stories about the people that you met and the situations that you were just in as a kid going across the U.S. and as your father was inventing the sport of bass fishing rather than the hobby of bass fishing.
Yeah. That might be a little bit much to say that he invented it. He was just there at the beginning. And,
he was there in the help to foster it. I'll say that.
Yeah.
So Damon, tell us one story too. We told little stories. You tell us one little thing nobody else has ever heard before that watches your show.
About me?
Yeah. Some cool thing.
Well, I put over 100,000 miles on motorcycles. I've driven a fair amount up and down the West Coast, pretty much. I haven't done the Four Corners of the United States. I haven't driven to Alaska yet, but those are the kind of things I do. But
what kind of bike you got right now? What's your ride?
I don't have one right now, actually. I'm getting one. I'm in the process of getting another one, but I had a K1200 BMW that I put the most miles on because it's just easy to put miles on with them. But when you talk about the places where we live and especially down where you guys live, you go up to Crater Lake, you go in Northern California, and there's a road from Redding, California that goes to the coast, the 101 in Southern Oregon, and go down that a ways, and then you get into the Western Oregon, Idaho, you can go to Hell's Canyon, you can go through Yellowstone, you can go into Wyoming, and that's where I've done a lot of riding, and up in northern Montana and in Idaho and stuff. So it's just, this is a great part of the United States to really be in. And it's, when you can go up to the backside of Mount St. Helens and look in there, I don't know if either of you have been up that road before, but it's an incredible drive when you just to get up there. And then it's just awe-inspiring when you see there's no trees there yet. And the fact that there's still logs in the lake.
Yeah. It's been 40 years.
It's been 40 years. Yeah. I just feel blessed that I've been able to ride a motorcycle like that and really have fun with it. But, my escapades were, really more in the manufacturing space and being able to, from a younger age, I was fortunate to be in a fast growing injection molding company. And I think I was still in college the first time I helped to design the build out for an injection molding facility. And then by the time I was in my late 20s, I was able to build a greenfield site in Tennessee and go down and run that for a number of years. And that was my way into manufacturing. And really, I've always had a love for building manufacturing businesses and taking a huge manufacturing facility and looking at like a puzzle and figuring out how stuff flows through it easier. It's fun. I don't do it a lot anymore, but I think that's fun. So that's me.
Cool.
But and now with the Exit Your Way, I get to help business owners grow their businesses, get them running right, from a strategic level, and then when they're ready, we help them sell or succeed their business, whatever they want to do at that point. But get it to the value they need and running like they need it to be. So today we're going to be, it's good today because we're going to get to talk about advisory boards. And I think advisory boards are an often overlooked potential advantage for small to mid-sized businesses. So Steve, can you kind of in a few words for a few minutes, talk a little bit about your thoughts in the situations where you've seen advisory boards effectively help the ownership and executive teams to run the businesses better?
Sure. And I think, part of the story that I tell is that as I've worked with manufacturers of, varying sizes, there's often this, preconceived notion that third-party vendors are outside your company and you're inside and you've got a brain trust. And I think as I've watched businesses become a little more sophisticated, what my experience is, I've watched them actually invite me and my teams in more as advisors, as well as people who do the work. Initially we were just people who did the work, but you can't do the good work for very long without actually knowing why you're doing it.
Yes.
And
it's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah. So I think a lot of companies, you can look at big corporations. They have boards of directors, which are, large or not large, but they're complicated legal governing bodies. And there's a lot of laws around being a board of directors, and there's a lot of reasons why a company would want one. And a lot of smaller companies think, well, that's not us. That's beyond us. That's what other people do. And in reality, having an advisory board or an advisory council that's outside your company can dramatically increase
like the knowledge base is what I think.
Yes, but creativity is what I was looking for, like inside the building. If you're looking for people to collaborate and come up with new ideas, you need ideas from the outside. And having people from the outside on an advisory board or an advisory council gives you types of views into your business that you're not going to get from the inside. And it doesn't matter how smart the people are. And I've also found that having an advisory council helps you identify gaps in your corporation. One of the organizations that we currently worked with, they were sort of missing an entire management team. So an advisory council can also act as fractional replacement for people when they come and go. You might have a CTO leave for a while, and having an advisory board in place actually provides that some continuity. And I think the conventional wisdom historically is that if you want to have institutional knowledge stay with your company, you need to have employees that stick around. And I think what's actually true is a lot of institutional knowledge these days is actually stored by third-party vendors who stick around when employees come and go and retrain people when they come and go. Advisory board can do the exact same thing, but it can do it all the way up to the executive level. So
that is a great point.
Ideas.
So those are great points. So John, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, let me just kind of fill in a little bit. I think Steve pretty much covered it there, but I worked for a couple of years out of my MBA program when I was done there for a boutique consulting firm back in New York. And we would have long engagements, but we would not allow them to go more than a year. And I was new to the company. I said, what the heck? Why not? Because you go native was the
Yep.
term. You go native, even as a consultant, an outside guy, meaning that the value we brought was definitely as an outsider. And that's kind of the point Steve's making here. But
Yeah.
I'll just use another term that I'm pretty sure applies. There are blind spots. Even the
Yeah.
very smartest of C-suite folks has a bias, has things that they just don't perceive that are going on, that they don't frame the questions quite right. They will pose something as an either or that is actually not. That kind of thing. So it's the framing and the big picture stuff as much as also the detail. And then I watched in this last engagement we did, I watched Damon bring a dashboard. Everybody worked on it, but Damon kind of drove that enabled them to make quick but accurate and insightful decisions and inferences. They wouldn't have thought of that, I don't think. They might have, but the actual structure of it, the way it went together, no, sorry. So that outside look is really critical. And then I'll throw in one other dimension. You say, okay, fine, I'll bring in a consultant. Well, by having like the four of us on this last engagement, we also triggered each other. I like to think it was like a nuclear reaction. We had these particles bouncing around, and Steve would say something that would hit my brain, and I'd go, "Oh, let's try that." And so we had a little creativity thing going, and we were pretty intimate with the CEO, so he was part of that whole deal. That creativity from having it be a more than one person thing, I was really impressed with that.
I think you're bringing up some good points, both of you here, in that the outside ideas and identifying gaps. I mean, that's definitely something that is part of the board, because you just don't know what you don't know. And really, in most ownership and executive teams, they know what they know. They got, and that's really, let's be honest, unless you somehow professionally decided you were going to be a business owner and you went to school to be a business owner and you went off and do it and you have all this education and experience in something, you really, that's a one out of a very few percentage of business owners that do it. Usually they got in business because it was either forced or they just saw an opportunity and jumped into something. And now I'm doing this, whereas I wasn't doing something else before. And they don't understand all of the things that the boards can, board can help you to understand. Because when you look at the board and the constituents that you really want in an advisory board, I mean, you kind of have to look at where your company is today and go, do I need it in sales? Do I need advisory help in technology or human capital or the industry I'm in? Do I need to understand my industry better, or in operations or finance, and really put that together? Put your board together appropriately around where your business is today and where you want it to go. So back again to that, what are your guys' thoughts on really understanding that? Because I agree 100% with what you're saying, Steve and John, about the third party perspective and how consultants now and coaches are used. I think they're used much differently than they were before, but they can be even more valuable if you're bringing them in at that advisory level as well. So what are your thoughts around adjusting the boards to really what your company needs at this point in time, rather than I'm going to get somebody from these areas and doing that?
Well, I think you sort of answered the question by asking the question. I think it's important to back up and just say, like, an advisory board is really just a structured and collaborative method for organizations to engage with external advisors. And what I would like to point out to companies out there, whether you're a manufacturer or not, your advisory board should be a fluid and dynamic entity. And because you might need an ESG person today, but you might not need them in 6 months. Likely as you need them all the time. But you don't have to have everybody there or all the time, So
Yeah.
it lowers the risk in your mind, I think, if you think I got to have, these 8, categories, and I have to have them filled with somebody all the time. One, that's just not true, because advisors can come in. There's something at any time. There's something to be said for continuity, and I suspect that there's certain types of advisors that will be more continuous than others, especially in manufacturing. You're going to want someone who understands one-piece flow and throughput accounting and the theory of constraints and lean manufacturing, and because they're going to be invaluable all the time. And I would make the case too that you need someone with an understanding of manufacturing accounting and not just accounting. And like the dashboards you mentioned, I don't want to keep plugging Damon, but those kind of dashboards, well, maybe I do want to keep plugging Damon, but it's not really, the conversation is not really about what we do, but what you can accomplish.
Yeah.
If you have someone who's providing you a different view into your finances and into your sales, and into your contributed margin that you're delivering every week or every month through your manufacturing process, you have a piece of information that I'm going to say that 95% of manufacturers don't have that. And because they're kind of just like working on almost like a FIFO cash program. Do I have enough to do it? I'll do it. If not, we're gonna cut marketing because we didn't sell enough. And that's not how you run a business. So if we back up, once again, I want to say, like, the main responsibility of an advisory board is really two. It's strategic guidance and monitoring and accountability. And from that, that's just counselor stuff.
Yep.
From that comes actual actions that have to be taken by somebody, which would be like defining reporting needs, possibly some one-on-one executive mentoring, because usually there's cultural issues.
Yep.
So team development and culture development come from that. And I'll say, like, the outcomes that you're really looking for are, one, more profitability, but you're trying to break the walls of, I call it the accidental know-it-alls, the internal echo chambers, that can sort of lead to a stagnant work environment and a corporate culture that can keep people, and that sort of lacks vision, accidentally. So those are the main things I would say about an advisory board, sort of from the top down in a couple different layers.
Yeah.
So what do you think, John?
Yeah, I'm going to keep going down that road. Recently, within the last month or so, Steve and I have run across, there's Steve's dog going out the door. So.
Oh boy.
That's Hunter. Something that's looming up on the horizon very seriously, and larger companies seem to know about this, and some smaller companies know about it. Sustainability, response to the global imperative, and the idea of having an advisory board that can help with that, to get you started, because many folks don't have a clue about that. But before you know it, you're going to be facing regulations, requirements, laws that are going to say you can't extract fossil fuels anymore if you happen to be an oil company. Something along those lines. It may just be a market-driven thing, but like here in Oregon, our entire electric grid will be renewable by, I think, 2035. Right now, it's at about 40%. So that affects a lot of people. So how are you going to respond to that? Well, if you have an advisory board, like the four of us that we had on this last one that we just finished not too long ago, we would be able to cobble something together that would almost be the equivalent of a chief sustainability officer, pro tem, just for a while, and at least start getting a carbon footprint measured, getting some kind of accountability in place, figuring out things to do that we're going to improve the carbon footprint, all that kind of thing, that I think is pretty hard to do. So just thinking about the experts that you have, that'd be another one that may fit in there.
Well, and you bring up a great point, and and that's a specific example. I think if you in a small to mid-sized business that your advisory board should be able to do. And Steve, I believe you mentioned this earlier. Is like if you need a chief security officer or chief revenue officer or an operations COO for a moment until you bring somebody else or somebody leaves or whatever happens, you can maybe someone on your advisory board can help fractionally for a little bit and help that and really keep you going when you need to keep going. And the other thing I think that is often overlooked is the power of the advisory boards to be able to draw upon their network, the people that are within their circle that are outside of the circles of the business owners and the executive teams themselves. Because as I saw in the last time that we were working together, I mean, it was an industry thing where Steve had knowledge in the industry and you were able to really draw upon a lot of things outside of the business from the industry to help that business. When it came to industry knowledge, when it came to potential people to hire and just a lot of things like that your advisory board can bring. So, for example, if you needed someone, you needed other leadership resources, John, you may have some really good sources for the company that would fit their exact need because of your experience in helping companies with organizational leadership. And that's one of the things that I think about a lot when I think of boards, and I think of the boards that I've been involved in the past is there's some of these people that are sitting on the boards and you have some really tough challenges in your company and they go, well, I know somebody that can help with that, or I've been in that situation before. And that kind of value is really, you really can't calculate it in a lot of sense, because when it's right there already, you can make things happen faster. So Steve, as you consider these advisory boards, you mentioned this a little bit. There are differences. Now, some people think of an advisory board, they may think of board of directors. Other can you just, so we understand this a little bit, the difference between an advisory board and a board of directors?
Yeah, well, a board of directors is actually a legal entity, and members of boards of directors have a fiduciary responsibility to the company, and they actually have to legally disclose conflicts of interest and things like that. And so there's a lot of responsibility from a legal standpoint that comes with both for the members of the board and for the company that has boards of directors. So it's a legal thing that is often very difficult to set up and can be expensive. And that it puts that out of the reach of most small to medium businesses, SMBs.
Yeah.
So,
SMBs.
yeah. But an advisory board is just a group of consultants, essentially. I would prefer experts, because you have subject matter experts. SMEs is another acronym. Everything's got to have 3-letter acronyms. In fact, you can start calling me just SFR that's my new.
There we go.
But anyway, so if you're working on an advisory board with a company, you're the subject matter expert for something. Or some things. In my case, I have this sort of like overarching technical architecture experience that allows me to sort of look across a business at all the different pieces of technology and how humans interact with it. But I also have, project management experience and leadership training experience that sort of allows me to be sort of the subject matter expert for the board team management and what the projects are that come out of that, right? So with inside a board of directors, there's usually, for something more legal like a board, you have boards of directors for corporations, and they can't be involved in the day-to-day workings of that corporation. And if you're on a nonprofit, you have several different types of board members, and oftentimes you either have board members on there because you want their money and their connections, which is one way of having a nonprofit board, or you actually want your constituents on the board. For instance, if you're a nonprofit that works in field work for AIDS patients, and you want a lot of money so you can do that. You might actually have a board of directors that has people who can fundraise and who are going to donate a lot of money. They don't get
Yep.
paid to do it. But you might also decide to have a board of directors that actually has field workers, nurses, and doctors, and even patients that are on the street, so to speak, as board members to give you feedback on what you're actually doing, because you're creating community outreach programs. So those are two different types of boards as well. With the advisory board, the nice thing about that, there's none of that the legal obligation, and what you're looking for is the right kind of mix for your company. That's what I'm looking for. I get hired to advise executives on how to run their business, and oftentimes some of the things that we come up with is actually, you need someone who is really good at strategic planning. And that's not actually my forte. It happens to be John Lamy's forte. And if you need financial planning, that's also not my forte. That's why I called you, Damon, in that one particular instance. And but my forte, I work really well with companies who have a really good strategic plan and understand what their finances are, because I have teams of people who can actually execute, and I understand what that execution looks like and how it relates to the human interaction, the stakeholder interaction with all the systems. So the whole people, processes, and systems that you hear on TV when you, I don't know, was it Shark Tank or one of those TV shows?
Yes.
So I think I described the difference between a board, board of directors, and an advisory board. And I think there's different types of advisory boards. I mentioned that there are councils. That, it's one thing to be a counselor, which I think is the main purpose of an advisory board. You're a counselor.
Yes.
Sometimes you're a therapist too.
Mhm.
But you're looking to guide the company in its overall overarching strategy. If work needs to be done in those upper management levels around organization and systems, that's an additional piece that can happen. But that can also work its way down into actually having an advisor right on the floor. If you talk about experts, we mentioned Scott Shumway, who couldn't be here today.
Yeah.
If you are trying to figure out how to set up a factory in Mexico to sew garments, or you're having a problem switching from one garment to another on your production floor, and you don't understand one flow and the constraints, he's going to be a great advisor. But you also want him standing on your sewing floor for at least a week, if not longer, talking to people and showing them how to do it right. So the advisory board can have a lot more reach into your company and be a lot more effective.
Yes. And that's the thing that you can keep with the advisory board. It's like you have an extra set of eyes, like you were saying earlier, that brings outside perspective to help identify those gaps that you may not even know, or the blind spots, as John was talking about too. I mean, when you look at it, what you know. That's really the thing that we talk about in a lot of small to mid-sized businesses, is you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And those blind spots are the things that can, over time, can really cause the downfall in the business. And I think as you look at it, the advisory board part of it is something where, if you put the pieces together right, you can continue to drive long-term success with your business, because you do have those resources available to you. So as you're talking, go ahead, John.
Let me weigh in with one other thing that just Steve was talking about, the difference between advisory board and a board of directors. And there's another thing that happens. It's not really excluded from what a board of directors can do, but it's just not kosher. It's not typically done. And it's this, that almost every company, at least every one I've ever worked with, frankly, there are people problems. There are, you mentioned the word psychologist or therapist. I don't know. There just are. And I think it's a little awkward for the directors to intervene on that. But I think it feels so natural to have an advisory board try very gingerly and very carefully and cautiously to get into that, and to help the C-suite or the CEO see how much that's hurting them, because it can be hurting them pretty bad. And they kind of know it, but help verbalize it. And this is where facilitation more than dictation comes in. You'd say, well, Damon, how's your relationship with Steve? You know, do you guys ever go out and get a beer together? Well, no, we just don't click. Oh, you don't click? Why do you say you don't click? And then you kind of go from there. I think now we didn't actually have that in this last go around, but I think that's something where there can be a huge amount of help. And I say we didn't. We actually had some of that, and people got moved around a little bit based on it. So I think that's another difference between the two, and another real plus for doing something like this, because those things are just tough.
Well, and I think you brought up one thing when I was sitting here thinking about what you were saying and the approach to this. And really, I think that if you're setting your board up right, you are essentially going to be able to get some mentorship from board members, because, advisory boards aren't here to dictate by any means. And they're not here to tell you, how to do, what to do. They're really to help the people within the company, the ownership and the executive teams to find their way based on the guidance that you're helping, the questions you're asking, helping them to find the solutions themselves by helping guide them there.
Yep.
And that's a big point, because I don't think that you should ever expect that your advisory board is going to fix systematic things that you as a owner executive team need to take care of.
Yep, for sure. That's where the advisory board has to just learn to ask questions, be sincerely interested, to be sincerely curious, and then just provide some guidance on the questions. And yeah, you weigh in occasionally because you do have a lot of experience, but boy, the ability to ask questions and to have people kind of emerge their own insights it's critical.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, the advisory board is more likely to uncover those systematic things and bring them to light. Other people might be aware of them. Usually the employees are fully aware of them, and the upper management might not, because they, intentionally or however that works, don't want to know about it, or they think that's just the way the dynamic is. And since they're in a position of power and don't have a reason to change, they don't. But, an advisory board provides that objective look all the way up to the executive level. And I think it's really important that they be given the authority to speak, or take the authority to speak plainly to executives who might be causing their own problems. The best executives, when something goes wrong, ask themselves, what did I do to help create this problem, and what could I have done better? And they also allow their employees at all levels to make mistakes and learn from them.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to change the topic a little bit, if that's okay, and just address. There's two things I think I hear from folks about why they don't want a board. And one of them is usually about cost. That costs a lot of money. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it does cost money. The other one is that, like, if we bring too many people in, it just gets difficult to make decisions, and that's also true.
Great points.
Yeah, and I think what's really true that we tend to forget is that diversity of thought on matters of importance usually makes it more difficult to come to a consensus. And the flip side to that is when a decision is reached, it's far more likely to be well informed, to be a better decision for the company. So I would caution people to be worried about how difficult something is, and have them think about it in this other respect, that, like, yeah, actually, if we get people that don't agree with me, then that's going to be more challenging, and I'm going to get something out of it that's better, and my company is going to get something out of it that's better than if I had that echo chamber. Because that's the other side of that not getting that diversity is echo chamber and stagnancy, I think. And then when it comes to cost, C-suite executives are expensive. You can't get a C-suite executive for under 6 figures, and depending on the size of your company, you might be paying even a small company, 40, 60 million. You might be paying $250,000 for a CEO. And you'd be lucky to find any CMO who even wants to work for you for under 100 a quarter or 150. Just ballpark numbers, And what I like to tell companies is whatever your base range is, your average range for those C-suite folks, you can get a really good advisory board with 4 to 6 people on it who meet once a month and provide high level direction and mentoring for everybody for roughly half the cost of whatever your average executive pay is. And when you think about it like that, it's kind of a steal. You get a brain trust of 4 to 6 individuals who have probably a combined 240 years of experience for half the cost of an executive. When you budget that in, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that is great points, because I think you're right. A lot of people look at it and look at cost and go, "Oh, it's going to cost." But you do get this brain trust. You do have these experienced people that can provide you, multiple amounts of return on that. But my thing is I don't think if you got a business that's just lumping along and you're not trying to grow, or you don't have things that you really want to do, I don't think an advisory board's for you. I mean, to do it for the sake of doing it. Yeah, don't waste your time. But if you're out there and you want your business, you want to turn around the results of your business, you want to really, take over a new market, you have some initiatives that you really want to do, or aggressive growth plans, that's where this pays off in, exponentially almost, because of what you said, that experience level you get and the guidance and mentorship that comes from that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you want cross fertilization between your silos and disciplines that leads to more innovation, in technology and management, you need to hire new people, right? And an advisory board is a great way to do that without having to actually hire 6 people at $120,000 a year. You can get 6 people for $65,000 a year or $70,000 a year in advisory capacity. And if you just want to optimize like 5% of your business inside your manufacturing facility, like by all means, just go talk to your operations guy and, implement a little bit of lean stuff or something. But if you really want to have an innovative, interesting company, you need to have an innovative and interesting brain trust that's helping you move in the directions that you want to go and providing feedback and allowing people to be super innovative and fail. You're going to fail 5 times out of 6, which is probably conservative. Maybe it's 9 out of 10.
Yes.
And people need to do that. They need to be able to fail. They need to be able to learn, and they need to be able to grow. And you need to be able to identify the failures fast and capitalize on the successes fast.
Definitely. I think that explains it very well, Steve, because it is this thing where you get this experience level, this guidance and mentorship that you, for a fraction of the cost that you would never. I mean, let's face it, in most businesses, you're not going to go out and do that anytime, really, and get the kind of business boost you can from having those people on that once a month basis, to be able to really go through, if you're preparing right and you're ready for those board meetings and you're giving them the right information and ask, as the business executive team, you're asking the right questions of your board. That's how you really extract the most value from them.
Exactly.
And so as you're thinking about this, what are some of the areas situations where you think that someone might really want to take a step back and really think about how a board could help them?
Did
Yeah,
you
I
want to answer
could.
that, John? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, I'll jump in with some kind of low-hanging fruit that way. And from having watched our friend Scott Shumway that's not here right now, I would start with lean. I would start with manufacturing process, uh, theory of constraints. Now, it could be that the company has that already, and if they do, great. They don't need it at all. But um, to get that in there uh, is a pretty big deal to get that right. It's non-trivial. I was a quality manager at HP for 3 years, and there's a lot to it. And they talk about Six Sigma, all that kind of thing. And then just watching Scott with this last client and how you have to be there. You have to be on the floor and watch what's going on. Huge, huge area. That's one. Another one is this thing I mentioned a minute ago, but the dashboard that the CEO uses to run the business. Which variables are going to go into it? Which metrics going to pop out of it? Uh, that was a huge benefit for this client. So let's just call it the financial dashboard. But the thing we learned there is you can have a CPA. Most small companies don't have a real high horsepower finance person. They usually hire out a contracted CPA. That person is going to be great for FASB type reporting and getting the taxes done. But for management accounting, for actually making decisions, it's a different deal. It's a different deal. It's not FASB. It's not kind of government oriented at all.
Yeah.
So that was a huge thing.
Yeah.
So there's two. A third one that comes to mind is some of the stuff that I did with this fellow, and that is how to just set the organization up. He had about 50 people in his company, I think, and we said, "Well, can we take a look at your org chart?" And he said, "What?" And a lot of people, I've seen this almost as often as not. Uh, they say, "Well, we see each other every day. We don't need to have staff meetings. We don't need an org chart.
Yes. Yes.
Why complicate life?" And you find out that A, people don't really know who their boss is. B, they don't know exactly what they're supposed to do and when they're doing a good job at it. And or maybe they're not supposed to do it, somebody else is, and they run around like crazy, like hair on fire. It's just amazing how that works. And you'll say, or another company I worked with said, "Do you have an org chart?" Yeah, we got one. And the other guy in the room said, "Heather, we don't." Well, she said, it's on the blackboard in there, Well, yeah, no, they think they do, but they don't. So to get that right, and here I am, an engineer. I'm used to working with wires and transistors, and I do that. I do that kind of work, and I facilitate it in that I say, well, what work needs doing here? What are the tasks that we have to do? Who's supposed to do that? And then blah blah blah. How do you get that set up? And it's a very, very interesting exercise, and I think it adds an enormous amount of value.
Well, you're helping to you're defining the roles in the organization. And I think this is,
exactly.
it comes back again. What you're explaining is exactly, the overall, what we're talking about today is how these boards can really help you bring up these blind spots, because if you're in this every day, you don't understand that you've got a blind spot in that. I don't know what Susan is doing over here. Susan really doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't know what the measure of success. She doesn't have a good measure of success. Right. She doesn't, she's been doing what she thinks is right, but is it really what the organization needs? Because we haven't taken the time to really understand all the roles that we need filled, and then fill them with the people that are in our organization or that we need to get in the organization.
Yep.
And when you look at this, I think the board advantage in the opportunities for boards are really around things like, if you're going to go into an extreme growth mode, or you have another industry that you're going to target, to bring in the expertise of how do we do this. And you're talking about what I like to I call it like the organizational development or cultural development of the of the business, is really to go, okay, our culture is not what we want it to be. That's something that's really hard internally for people to fix, or to see, even to see.
Yep.
And then when you look at Steve and the kind of things that you do with technology, it's like technology is so slippery and multidimensional that it's one of these things that there are so many options to do a certain way or run your business. What are some of the best ways? What really is the best for this application? And when you're talking about, and even back again for what you were talking about with Scott and operations, how can we be more efficient? Because we've, and these are words that I just chalkboard, fingernails on chalkboard. We've always done it this way, and they don't know the other ways to do it. With these advisory boards, this kind of talent you can bring in can really leverage their knowledge and move these situations forward. And I look at it from the ownership perspective, and I think that, culture, your efficiencies, things like technology, and then Steve, the a lot of things that you do is really helping the CEO/owners understand their role and do that, because that's a time as these businesses go through the stages, the ownership role or the executive roles have to change with it. And when business is small, the owner can do this. When it's a little bit bigger, they have to change. When it gets even bigger, they have to change again. And the help that strategic advisor you're providing to that highest level executive in the business keeps their sanity a little bit more, hopefully, but gives them a roadmap, because it's a place they haven't been.
Yeah, exactly. And think about the way most manufacturers start is there's a gal who made something with her hands and thought it was really cool, and then thought, hey, if I make 10 of these, I can make money. If I make 100, I can make more. And if I make 1,000, I can make more. 5 years later, she's not making things with her hands anymore. She's the president of a company that's doing, just say, a modest $2 million something. In 18 employees, maybe was a I don't know, psychology major at Willamette University and never thought that she'd be doing this. Might have some leadership skills that definitely does. They always do, but doesn't have them all. And certainly probably doesn't understand business the way that she should. And I remember years ago, one of the people that I had the good fortune of being an employee of was himself employee number 49 at Microsoft. And he retired when he was 41, moved to the Rogue Valley when I was like 20 or was something, and opened an outdoor store. And that's where I worked. But one of the things he said is every time, it was just an aside too, every time a company doubles in size, it has to change how it does everything.
Yep.
And I don't know why that particularly stuck, but I've found it to be true, And when you're 3 million, you do stuff different than when you're 6, and you do something different at 13 million as well. You won't find a lot of companies that are at 3 to 6 million that have a suite of C-suite executives. And at 8 million, they might have a few, but mostly maybe they'll have a president of operations and a CEO and a CMO. And it's I realize these are like rules that can be broken because there's no static rule that can be applied here, but it definitely, like, a $60 million company needs an executive that provides direction, doesn't micromanage, supports a culture, a sustainable culture of accountability and honesty, which is very difficult to do, and lets people take ownership and have agency inside their departments. And at 3 million, you don't have to have that at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, the founders aren't necessarily always the best people to be executives, and like you said, they have to grow. An advisory board is the way to do that. And I think it's it's not used enough.
Yeah.
There's a lot of companies, in that $6 to $20 million range who end up having an advisory board when they're 90 million. But if they'd have had it when they were 12, they would have saved themselves a lot of pain and suffering, and there would have been a lot more learning. There would have been a lot more collaboration. The company would have been a lot more fun to work for. There would have been less turnover. There's a lot of, all those sort of frustrating things that about if you've ever run a business or been in business that wasn't well.
Yeah.
You can mitigate a lot of that. We're just talking about mitigating risk.
Yeah.
The
Well,
main risk of running a business is that you don't know what you don't know.
Amen.
there you go. That's it.
Amen.
That's
All right.
it.
Mic
Because
drop.
we just dropped a mic right there because, and in the work that I'm doing when owners get their business to the size they want, one of the key things that they have to have is, if I want to exit my business, I can't be the value in the business. I can't be the brains in the business. So what you're talking about, and it really helps us, because what we try to do with owners when the business as you get closer to the time that your business is going to sell, you need to be more and more of an advisory board member. You can't be a direct part of that business if you really want to maximize the value of the sale of your business, because you just, if you're going to sell your business and you're all the value, you're not going to get nearly as much money as if you have a team that can do it. And when you talked about the different size in business, when you have a business that's got, say it's $1 million in EBITDA or profit, whatever you want to call it, your management team for a buyer has to look much different than if that's $5 or $10 million in profit. And once it gets up there to a certain point, and that, it's around the $5 million mark, you must have, well, not must, but if you want to get the money, you really should. You want to have a CEO and executive management team that can develop and execute a 5-year strategy. If you don't have that, you're likely going to drop the value of your business by 30 to 50%. And that's millions and millions of dollars. And I've seen it in the tens of millions of dollars.
Wow.
And it's something that you really need to understand. And this is another thing that the advisory board members can bring, that as the business owner, it was Janet, she was making this stuff with her hands, and now she's got other people making this stuff, and now she's got 100 people making this stuff. Janet's still, in her mind, she's been able to lead enough people to get up there, but now Janet's just at the point that Janet wants to capitalize and really generate the wealth that she wants to generate from this business, and leave it and sell it and do something else. That's a significant inhibitor to it. And these boards, there's multifaceted approach that they can help all the way through the life cycle of an owner being in it to maximize this. But I just want to say, we've gone on here for a while now, and it seems like this, and it's a shame that we couldn't have Scott here, because his operational perspective would have been really helpful, and I'll have to have him come back and talk about that with us again later. But I want to thank you guys for being here today, and just really talk about some of the ways you can drive your business success with an advisory board, some of the situations where that advisory board might be applicable, and then some of the ways that the advisory boards can help. So, Steve, always good to have you on.
Thanks for having us. It's been a great conversation today.
Yep. And John, awesome to see you again, and love the knowledge that you share. So thanks so much, guys. I want to thank everyone else listening today too. We will be back again next week with more guests sharing interesting information, and we're out for now. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, Damon, thank you so much.